Outcry from the left and the right to the president's remarks on Saudi Arabia today. Will the administration be forced to take a tougher stance? Retired four-star general and Fox News senior strategic analyst General Jack Keane joins us now. Great to see you as always tonight, General.
Good to be here, Shannon.
So what about trying to thread this needle? Because there are some who will say, his critics, the president is overhyping the business relationships, the dollars at stake. He talked today, though, about the joint goal of fighting terrorism and how Saudi Arabia is a partner there. But many people just left and right outraged by this murder and the fact that they think the president needs to have a stronger moral position for our country.
Yeah, I think there really is a strategy forward where it's not exclusive of one another. In other words, this outrageous crime has always been at the intersection of America's national interest with a key ally and America's values. So can we develop a path forward where we deal with both of them? I think we can. First of all, we should see it as an opportunity to better the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia because of the severe international embarrassment that they're suffering as a result of this crime. And therefore, we can emphasize America's values. I think part of the strategy should be to say to the Saudis, the relationship is damaged, but it is repairable if you're willing to accept some conditions that will govern your behavior in the future. And we'd have to be specific about them: accountability, full disclosure, reestablishing trust, a toleration policy for critics and descendants. That would enable us, I believe, to push forward the moral clarity that this country has always had, and at the same time maintain a relationship. However, we would have to condemn the Saudi regime publicly. We're condemning a crime, but we haven't condemned the regime because it's difficult to accept the implausible theory that MBS was not involved or the Crown Prince. But let's just accept that for a minute, that he's not. The second in command of the intelligence service executed an operation in a foreign land to kill a dissident or a critic with 15 security agents. They did that in what they believe was in accordance with regime authority, regime policy, and regime culture, particularly as it pertains to dissidents. That makes the regime very culpable, and they should be condemned for that action. I do believe there is a path forward. We can certainly I'm not suggesting, nor a lot of other national security experts, you have to walk away from the arms deal. But we need to change the nature of the relationship to go forward. And I think we could wind up, actually, with a stronger relationship if the Saudis are willing to move towards a more of a values path than what they've been currently on.
So you think there's an opportunity for leverage here for the U.S. to actually get the better of the deal, but actually leverage the issue of human rights as well. I want to talk to you about the defense spending conversation we're now going to have, this idea of whether there's going to be a 5% cut across the board for the Pentagon for defense. In a Forbes.com piece by contributor Lauren Thompson, he talks about the House Democrats now being in control of the House because the two sides have to work together to get this thing done. He says the most likely outcome going forward is that military budgets will flatline for the remainder of the Trump presidency. He says the bias of the system is in favor of cutting weapons rather than readiness or people when money becomes scarce, and Democratic control of Congress's lower chamber will strengthen that bias. How do you think it impacts the military overall if they have to make these cuts?
Yeah, I absolutely do believe that's the path that we're currently on. And what that will do, clearly, is stop the recovery of the Defense Department after 15 years of decline. And what makes this a serious issue is that I've been a member of a commission for the last year looking at our national defense strategy. And we have looked at that and have recognized, somewhat to our alarm, because of the details that we were able to get into, is how serious the deterioration and evaporation has been of the United States military, even though it's the primary military in the world today. And it puts us in danger that we have not been for decades in losing a conventional war, particularly with Russia and China. And the new commander who just took over the Indo-Pacific a few weeks ago got up and said something pretty similar. He said, you know, there's no guarantee we could win a war against China today. Those are alarming statements made by a superpower of the United States capacities. We have got to fix this deterioration, and much of it is in the area that you just suggested would suffer a decline. We need to get back out on the technological edge where we have the advantage, not our adversaries.
Yeah, when you talk about a potential loss to Russia or China, that gets people's attention. General, you always get people's attention. We're glad you're here with us. Thanks for coming in.
Happy Thanksgiving.